Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take sources you send us, pull out the key bits, and basically give you a shortcut to getting up to speed.
Exactly. You give us the material, we dig into it together, find the important stuff, the interesting details.
And today, we're diving into the world of dog breeding. We've got a transcript from the Tom Garner Kennels YouTube channel. It's episode 26, Young Cowgirl DBL GDCH Booger.
So it's a real window into that community. We'll be looking at bloodlines, character, and this idea they talk about a lot, gameness.
Yeah, our mission really is to trace the story of this dog, Double Grand Champion Booger, figure out his family background, but also, talk about the bigger picture stuff, like integrity, ethics in that community, and what exactly this gameness quality means.
Sounds good. Where should we start? With Booger himself.
Yeah, let's start with Booger. The transcript says he was bred by Steve Pennington.
Okay. And his parents, Pedro and Young Cowgirl.
That's it. Pedro off Young Cowgirl. And Young Cowgirl, she's got her an interesting story. Her parents were Snooty and Cowgirl.
Snooty and Cowgirl. Okay.
Now, this Cowgirl, she was apparently the very last pup produced by Champion Midnight Cowboy.
Oh, wow. Champion Midnight Cowboy. Baker Davis owned him, right?
Yeah. So you can sort of feel the weight of that lineage already. That suggests something substantial.
It does. And the host of the video actually got Young Cowgirl. How could that happen again?
Right. He mentions he got her when he bought out Atlas Brewer's yard, his property.
Ah, okay. So it shows you how sort of intertwined everything is, these dogs, these breeders, the properties even.
Exactly. And Brewer had other dogs there at the time, too. Champion Spike, some Snooty and Snooty Hannah Patch dogs, which the host says he wasn't really interested in. And another dog named Smeller. And Smeller kind of takes us down a bit of a rabbit hole.
Ah, yes. Smeller. And this leads into the host's view of Alice Brewer's character, which is quite, well, revealing.
Yeah, it gets pretty intense. So Smeller, he was a littermate to Champion Thor.
Right, both from Snoopy and Miss Pool Hall Red. And that breeding, wasn't it Ronnie Hyde and Kinsey Wood involved? Or maybe Brewer himself after he got Snoopy?
Yeah, the transcript mentions Ronnie Hyde and Kinsey Wood Brewer connection there. And there's this rumor about Smeller, specifically about his color. He was brindle.
What was the story there?
Well, the suggestion or the rumor was that Brewer kind of fudged the pedigree. He told people both Smeller and Thor were just off Snoopy.
Okay.
But the rumor was that Smeller was actually sired by a dog named Satch, maybe to satisfy someone who couldn't decide between breeding to Snoopy or Satch. But since there wasn't really DNA testing back then...
Ah, I see. So he could just say they were both Snoopy pups and avoid the complication? A bit shady, maybe.
Seems like it. But, it's actually Brewer's later actions that really seem to have angered the host. Not so much the pedigree thing. He calls Brewer he uses pretty strong language, piece of shit, based on two things that happened.
Okay, so what were these incidents? They must have been serious.
They sound like major breaches of trust. The first one involves Smeller again. The host paid extra for Smeller with an agreement. If Smeller didn't sire a live litter, he'd get his money back.
All right. A sort of guarantee.
Exactly. But then Smeller vanished, along with another female dog, Shibo, who was off Snooty. This happened after the host went to Brewer's for what he called a kind of suspicious cookout.
Vanished. Just disappeared.
Yeah. And the host is pretty convinced Brewer made them disappear to avoid paying the refund for Smeller, and he just took Shibo too.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty bad if true. And the second incident?
The second one, allegedly, Brewer couldn't make it to some events, so he supposedly tipped off the authorities about it.
Yeah.
Which led to a raid.
Oh, man. Okay, so, these stories paint a picture that really clashes with the whole honor code you sometimes hear about in these circles.
It really does, and it brings us to something the host talks about the ethics. He says, for the dogs, it's black and white. They're either honest in a contest or they're not. Simple.
Right. Clear standard for the animals.
But he questions if the people, the dog men, always hold themselves to that same clear standard.
That's a fascinating point. This idea of maybe situational ethics, where, personal gain or avoiding trouble might lead people to, let's say, rationalize things they wouldn't tolerate in their dogs.
Exactly. It suggests a potential double standard there. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about this concept of gameness. It comes up a lot, and it's clearly super important to them.
Absolutely. Gameness.
Yeah.
In this context, it's like the highest praise you can give a dog. It means incredible courage, determination, a spirit that just won't quit, even when things get really tough. It's deeply, deeply admired.
And apparently it's not that common either. The host throws out a number. Maybe only like 10% of the dogs actively involved really have it. That true gameness.
Yeah, he seems to think it's rare. He mentions he's hesitant to name names now because he got some backlash before.
Right, yeah.
But he does mention a big black Eli dog from Florida and someone else from Alabama as examples of truly game dogs.
He also brings up an interesting angle that being game is often tied to what you're fighting for, like protecting your family. It makes it sound almost primal, you know?
Mm-hmm. Instinctual.
Yeah.
And there's this idea he mentions of a kind of unspoken code within the fraternity, the breeding community. Like they have to stand by each other to protect the value of gameness. It's almost like a core tenet holding them together.
Yeah, and then he makes this leap, drawing a parallel between game dogs and game people. And this is where it gets, well, pretty controversial, or at least thought-provoking.
Right. The example he uses is Timothy McVeigh. And it's crucial to stress this isn't about condoning McVeigh's actions at all.
Not at all, no.
It's purely looking at his demeanor, his apparent resolve facing execution. The host points out McVeigh seemed unwavering, totally committed to his, deeply flawed beliefs right up to the end. That's the gameness parallel he's drawing.
It's a really stark example. It forces you to separate the act from the perceived internal resolve, which then makes you ask, okay, where does that kind of quality, that gameness, come from in humans?
And the perspective offered in the source leans heavily genetic. The idea is that through evolution, people with that kind of unwavering determination were maybe essential for group survival.
Sort of a survival trait baked in over millennia?
Yeah, and then experience comes along and sort of fine-tunes it, reinforces it.
So it's leaning towards nature over nurture. He suggests something like, 90% genetic? With experience just shaping that foundation.
That seems to be the argument presented, that the core tendency is innate and life just brings it out or hones it.
And the reward isn't just personal toughness, it's also about passing it on. Producing game offspring, contributing to a strong lineage, this idea of actively improving the genetics, that seems key.
Definitely. Progressing the bloodline with these desirable traits.
There's also that phrase he mentions, if you know, you know.
Oh, yeah.
He says it's common in the community, but maybe sometimes used by people who don't fully get the depth of it. It implies this sort of intuitive understanding of gameness.
Right, like it's something you recognize on a deeper level, maybe through shared experience or just an innate sense beyond just talking about it.
Okay, so let's bring it back to Double Grand Champion Booger. We get a bit more insight on his breeder, Steve Pennington.
Yes, and the portrayal of Pennington is quite positive. He's called a real dog man, someone honest with himself and his dogs.
Which is a definite contrast to the picture painted of Brewer earlier. Shows you the range of characters, I suppose.
For sure. And we hear about Pennington's earlier breeding. He had this female, godmama, who was part Eli.
Right, mixed breed.
He bred her to the host's dog, Amos, and got Amos' son. Apparently, Pennington was really happy with that dog, Amos' son. Shows that sometimes crossing lines works out well.
Yeah, interesting. And Pennington also had another important female, a daughter of Snake and Bissy, sister to Champion Mechanic's mother, Ronnie.
That's the one. And she apparently made a formidable dog named Tornado quit, took forfeits off him. So she must have had quite the reputation herself.
Definitely speaks to her quality. Okay, so finally, Booger himself. Described as smart, systematic, skilled.
And his record backs that up. 11 wins against hogs. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, and you can really hear the host's regret that he didn't get more of Booger's blood into his own yard.
That says a lot, doesn't it?
Exactly.
When someone experienced wishes they'd used a particular dog more, Booger clearly had something special.
But the reason why he couldn't, it's just bad luck, really. He got sent this well-bred female from someone respected, but she unknowingly had Vassia, some disease, passed it to Booger, and Booger died before he could be bred much. Just shows the risks,
Yeah, really unfortunate. One sick dog can have huge ripple effects.
And Booger's own breeding, it was Snooty Amos over Godmama. And Godmama, as we said, had mixed lines, Eli in there.
Right.
The host even admits, on paper, that's not the kind of pedigree he'd usually go for. He prefers tighter, more defined family breeding.
So Booger was maybe unexpected, pedigree-wise?
Kind of, yeah. But despite that less conventional background, he clearly excelled, won at a high level. It just goes to show, sometimes the individual dog and the right combination can, defy the formulas.
Absolutely. Performance trumps the pedigree chart sometimes.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've followed Booger's lineage back, seen some pretty starkly different personalities in this dog breeding world.
The contrast between Pennington and Brewer was quite something.
Yeah. And we've explored this really central, complex idea of gameness in the dogs, and then that controversial extension to humans.
Digging into this transcript, it really does give you a feel for this specific world, its values, its conflicts. And it makes you think about bigger questions, too, about character, about innate qualities.
It definitely shows how powerful shared beliefs and reputations are within these tight-knit groups. And it kind of pushes you to think more carefully about words like courage or determination and how they play out differently. So maybe a final thought for you listening. Think about where else you see that kind of unwavering resolve, that gameness pop up in life, totally outside of dog breeding. What do you think really makes it? Is it mostly genetics, like the source suggests? Is it all about experience? Or is it something people actively choose? Definitely something to chew on.
Yeah, good question to ponder.
All right, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.